Yo, let's talk about the psychology of using or not using the white cane. But first, let me start with a fact. I'm going to read it off my phone so I don't mess it up. According to the Perkins School for the Blind, most people who are visually impaired don't use a white cane. In fact, only an estimated 2% to 8% do. The rest rely on their usable vision, a guide dog or a sighted guide. And I wanted to share that with you because I'm one of those people. I don't use a white cane. And why not, you're asking? That's a great question. Let's get into it. So if you've been following see-through for a while, then you know that I have the eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. And if you have RP, then you know it's complicated to explain to people. Even the name is long. But if you're new to RP, just know that it basically means my peripheral vision, got to keep the mic in front of me, but my peripheral vision is diminishing. So what that kind of means is if this was what you were seeing, then this is how it would be affected. So basically, even though my peripheral goes away, that center part of my vision is still there. And living with an eye condition like RP is very strange because, for example, I don't drive anymore because I'm not confident enough in my vision to not hit a pedestrian. So I just gave up driving, but I can also see well enough to where I can hit tennis balls against this wall as long as I can track the ball and where it hits the wall. Yep, vision loss is super weird. And long story short, at some point in my life, I'm going to lose enough vision to where I'm going to have to use this bad boy, the white cane. And the thing to remember about the white cane is that it is a signal to the world that you have a visual impairment. So not only is it a tool to use to detect obstacles, like stairs or bumps or drops in the road, or stuff in the sidewalk when you're walking, it's also used as a signifier to people around you that you are visually impaired. And that way they know to move. That way, if you do bump into them, they can kind of see the cane and it kind of signals to them. And you don't have to do this long explanation about why you bumped into them or why you didn't see them, etc. So that's a huge part of why the white cane is kind of like the GOAT of visually impaired tools. But at the moment, I don't really need to use this thing. But yet, I'm still someone experiencing vision loss. So when I don't use the cane, it can create some pretty awkward experiences for me. So I'm going to share a couple stories to kind of explain what I'm talking about here. But recently, my brother was visiting me. I live in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, near the water. And sometimes I take the ferry into the city. So when you're walking to the ferry, it's kind of like this long pier. And then at the end of the pier, you get on the ferry. It takes you to FIDI, Wall Street area. And as we were walking down this pier, there were some fishermen with their poles set up against the side. And with my vision loss, I did not see their poles. So I'm walking, looking down at the ground, make sure I'm not tripping over anything. But what's in my peripheral that I don't see is these fishing poles. And I kick one pole. And the fisherman is like, "Oh, what's up, dude? What are you doing? What are you doing?" So then I get flustered. I pick up the pole, set it down, keep walking. He had another pole set up. So then I hit two poles in a row. I messed up this fisherman's whole setup. And he was so confused. He was like, "Watch where you're going." And, as someone with RP, I could have been like, "I'm trying, man. I'm trying." But for him, I'm not using a white cane, so he's just confused as to why I didn't see it because he's assuming that I have the typical eyesight. So that's one story. The second example would be I was recently outside of a movie theater with my wife. We had just finished watching a movie. It was nighttime, and we were going to take an Uber back to our apartment. And as we were waiting for the Uber, some woman came up to me, and she asked me if I had a lighter for her cigarette. I guess I just look like somebody who smoked cigarettes. But I had no clue she was talking to me. No clue. But apparently she was looking right at me. I heard the audio basically, and it was her saying like, "Hey, can I have a lighter?" But I didn't know that she was talking to me. So I just completely ignored it. But apparently she was looking right at me, according to my wife. And then she got irritated that I just ignored her because she thought I just was plain out ignoring her. And she walked away kind of laughing and kind of giggling to her friends about, "Wow, that guy was a weirdo. He just ignored me, just pretended I wasn't even there," when in reality, I had no clue she was there because she was in that pocket of peripheral vision. And my wife got irritated when we were in the Uber. She was kind of like, basically that girl, that kind of energy. And then it kind of clicked with me in that moment. I wasn't upset. I used to get upset at these kind of things, but I think at a certain point you get desensitized to it. You get used to it. All that to say, I've come to the assumption that it's not them being an asshole. It's kind of me being an asshole because I'm not using the cane. I have this visual impairment, So if I want other people to know that I have vision loss, that I have a diminished field of vision, then I have to be the person to carry the cane. If I don't use the cane, how is other people going to know that I'm experiencing vision loss? So it's on me. That's all I'm saying. It's my fault. If I don't use the cane, then I can't get mad at people who are assuming I have perfect sight. That's not fair to them. I'm the problem. That's kind of the conclusion I've come up with. And I'm saying all this because I know there's a lot of people out there who don't use the cane. That's why I started off this video with that statistic about only 2 to 8% of people do use a cane. So for example, my mom, who is legally blind, doesn't use the cane. And if I'm being honest, that annoys me sometimes. I remember this as a kid. We would be in the grocery store and she would use the shopping cart as kind of this guide in the grocery store to kind of not bump into things. But she would every now and then bump into people with the cart. And then they would give her this dirty look like, how dare you run into me? They didn't know my mom was visually impaired. They didn't know my mom was legally blind. And then my mom would try to give this whole long story like, hey, I'm sorry, I have this eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. And she would expect people to process what she's saying, even though it's this long drawn out explanation. And no one has time for that. People are just trying to get their groceries. So if she was using a cane in those instances, she wouldn't have to say anything and they would instantly know. How they say a picture is worth 1,000 words? Using a cane is kind of the same thing. So basically, at the end of the day, if you're one of those people like me who don't use the cane, then you kind of just have to accept the fact that when you have these awkward scenarios, the missed handshakes, the tripping over things, you kind of just have to accept the fact that, hey, it's a lot of it's on you. A lot of it's on you. And now, if you're using a cane and someone's rude to you, then that's on them because you're using the cane. You're doing everything in your power to kind of make it known and to be out and about, be an independent, visually impaired person. But if you're not using cane, honestly, quit complaining about the awkward scenarios you're putting yourself in. And that's coming from me, someone who doesn't use the cane. I plan to use the cane. I'm not there yet. And in the meantime, I'm just going to have to accept all the awkward situations that are going to come with that. And at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to the question of, do you care more about what people think of you when you run into them or you miss their handshake? Or do you care more about them seeing you with the white cane? And that's really all it comes down to at the end of the day. But yeah, I just wanted to share this with everyone and let me know if it resonates with you. If you think I'm being an asshole with this theory, let me know if you think I'm right or wrong or my thoughts are valid, invalid. I want to start a discussion. Thanks for listening. Stay transparent, everyone.